Yeah, so there is a little update, part five, right? So basically, here's the update. What's going on is the reason that they're saying everything is taking so long is because they're making things more complicated. They're more than likely, and what it's seeming like, manipulating the PRI. What I mean by that is a PRI is an instrument that they use, patient instrument that basically they use when they're trying to gauge what kind of care a patient would need to go home or go to a facility, whatever, whatever. Now, when you speak to the respiratory therapist at the hospital that my mother's in, she's a pretty stable patient, not too much suctioning. You don't have to do many alterings or changes to the ventilator, none of that stuff at all. The same when you speak to many of the nurses, same exact thing. When I mentioned to either respiratory or nurses at this hospital, they all kind of concur and agree that they think she would do pretty good at home and actually think it sounds like a great idea. Unfortunately, what it seems like is between the doctor and the social worker, mostly the social worker, they have this crazy narrative where I don't know if they're worried about being held liable by letting a patient's wishes get granted, or they have a weird, unadulterated, crazy, unnatural obsession with just sending everybody's family members to nursing homes when they don't need to be. But unfortunately, what's going on is they're more than likely manipulating the PRI, like in other words, making my mother sound like a real difficult patient. She only needs suction once in a while on the ventilator, but they're probably making it sound like she needs to be continuously suctioned every 5 seconds. She's this difficult patient. Uh, they're probably, one of them trying to make a crack about my mother's weight, but my mother's lost 40 pounds since she's been there. But for all I know, they have her 50 to 100 pounds heavier than she actually is. Another tactic to try to what they're basically doing is trying to intimidate care companies in order to stop her from getting home care or a nurse in the house. Another thing they're trying to do is ask for care that they can't afford in the hospital to be at the house. So in a hospital or nursing home, you share your nurse, you share your CNA, you share your doctor. Uh, and the same thing in a nursing home. At home, you would literally, at home, if you have caretakers and all that stuff, you don't need a nurse per se to administer medicine. I've been doing that to my mother for years. I will be trained on the ventilator, so I don't need a nurse to come here and do it for me because I'll be trained by a licensed respiratory therapist who has trained numerous people throughout her career on how to use it. Um, they also lie and say that you can wean somebody off a ventilator. But when you ask respiratory therapists at the hospital independently, and you ask this respiratory therapist from the company, you can be weaned off at home. It just has to be under the guidance of a respiratory therapist, and your doctor has to put it in order. So, what they're doing is highly unethical. I would say, borderlining on sadistic and stuff like that. But that's more than likely what's going on. When I spoke to them, they said, well, this company didn't want to accept and da. Mind you, I found a home health aid company that will give me home health aids for my mother's case. I found a vendor for the ventilator and all that stuff. That's all me. But as in like a program that you would get when you're freshly released from the hospital, which I don't think we necessarily even need per se. They're trying to intimidate those folks by making my mom sound like this crazy patient that needs all this care. When in reality, when I talk to my mother's doctor, when I talk to RNs who do not work for this particular hospital system, they all say my mom sounds like a stable, kind of not too crazy of a patient. Like there's not a gigantic skill level that you need to do. I mean, one respiratory therapist even told me today at this particular hospital, yeah, you could learn the ventilator. It's not rocket science. I think what it is they're threatened against a different kind of healthcare.